Hi IB nerds, this is your final revision video for the IA assessment. In this particular video we will be discussing the importance of your bullet list, how to go back through your plan and ensure all your pieces are there, and then make sure that you have all the correct references from that plan on your 10-point bullet list to take into assessment. So the first thing you want to do is, now that you have a completed IA plan, everything is there, you've looked at all the content and all the criteria, you've ensured that your global issue is present, you connect back to it every time you make a point, you're unpacking your analysis, you're using character names and details from that moment, but also from previous or future parts of the text that make your point a bit more clear. All of those things are there. The content is there. When that is done, then you want to start going through and tying off the loose ends. So if we take a look at my plan here, you can see that all of the revisions that I included are in this like gold color here, and I tried to keep them italicized as well. There are some other things italicized, but for the most part, when you scroll through and you see the gold italicized stuff, that's me going back through and adding in based on my criteria evaluation and what I should improve. Otherwise, my color coding has stayed the same. So if you haven't done color coding yet, I highly recommend it. It allows you to find those key words that will trigger your memory and remind you what it is you were going to say about that particular thing. It also ensures that you have all parts of the criteria, right? Because this is set up so that you get your criteria A, you get your criteria B, you get your criteria C, right? Criteria D is here as well. So if you do color code, then you know for a fact where you're at and when you need to say something, why you need to say it. So you'll notice I've identified keywords in each box that are going to end up going onto my 10-point bullet list. Okay, and I showed you this last year, so this should be sort of a review. So you'll notice when we look at my bullet list in a moment that the keywords are still color coded on the list. I do that for each row, so everything that refers to the what, okay, what is the author intentionally doing in this moment, is red. Everything that refers to the how are they using that thing, that metaphor, is going to be in this orange. And then lastly, why is it important, how does it connect back to my global issue, is going to be in blue. And then in purple are my fancy words and high-level vocabulary. I've also decided to add my transitions into my bullet list as well. I feel like it's going to help me stay organized, help me stay connected, and ultimately allow me to give the best IA I possibly can. Once you've gone through this whole thing, you've looked over it, you've made sure that it's perfect, your next goal is to read through it, like out loud, just read it. Time yourself, see how long it takes you. I did this recently and made a couple of stops to like fix some things I noticed. And I probably went slower than I would go in real time. I got to about 12 minutes just reading it from beginning to end. So I'm going to continue that practice tonight of just reading it over and over and over again out loud so I can practice my speed and pace, my fluency, and my pronunciation of the various high-level words that I've incorporated. Be sure that you know how to say your character names. Be sure that you know how to say your author names. This is going to be an important part of criteria D. For if you come in and you say Marjan's name incorrectly, you might be counted down if the evaluator knows that that's not how you say Marjan's name. And I'm your evaluator, and I know. So there you go. Anyway, so moving on. If we open up our bullet list, okay, we've got two bullet lists I'm going to show you here. The first one on the left, the first one on the right is the one I created at the very beginning, like the end of last year, right? This is when I started with and I did my recording with. This is the one that you've already heard and given feedback on. So notice that my color coding still exists here, right? We've got my theme and global issue stuff in green, and then we've got the what is the author doing, how is the author doing it, why is that important, okay, and then my vocabulary. And I do that for every single bullet point. Now this is super colorful, it's very pretty, but I found it to be a little bit confusing because, for example, I wouldn't see the word depiction until I got to the end of the row, which was confusing for me when I might be using this word up here. So then I went through and decided to make sure that everything was in its place so that as I looked down and referenced and read momentarily, I could easily see what was next up and based on the color coding, know why. So if we look at my second bullet list, this is my revised bullet list. I've decided to do the weaved technique. So on my first list, I handled one text first and the second text after. According to my evaluation, that was a little disconnected. People weren't sure what was connecting about the two texts until the end. So I decided to try the weave factor on. The first thing I did is I came back to my global issue reference point here, and I noticed that there were some differences between this and what was on my IA plan. So, and I also wanted to make sure there was that good global context there so that my audience understands why I'm even looking at this, why is it even an issue. So I took this, I combined it with the revised thesis that I had here, and I put it all here. Now, I am not going to read this whole thing. In fact, I'm going to look and make sure that I can even have this on my bullet list, but I'm going to ideally memorize this or memorize it in some fashion. I don't have to say the exact same words, just as long as I make those points. Then I came down here and I put my thesis right there. So really this first part that I'm going to begin with is all about my global context. You might choose to jump right into the text and get to your global context in another moment. That's up to you. I'm choosing to start it that way to create the foundation. Okay, notice I don't say anything like my name is Cody Kelly and here is my oral, or I am going to talk about today. Don't start that way. Just jump right into your analysis. So I just immediately started just like I would a paper of some sort. And then I go down to my actual bullet points. And what I did is I added in my transition phrases in black, italicized at the end of each point. So I know exactly what I'm saying next. Originally, I felt like this might be too much to have per bullet point, but upon reading the IB Lit guide, it says that each bullet point cannot be excessive in length. I don't really know what that means, but I would imagine excessive would be anything, past 3 lines, something like that. So if you're blocking things out, that's okay. But I would imagine, more than this amount of text is maybe a little bit too much, but leave it up to your discretion. Just make sure you don't have a full giant thing here. I think a good sort of point of reference would be make sure it is no more than a page or a page and a half long. Anything above that would be considered excessive. So down here, what I ended up doing was taking, if you notice, on this example, my vocabulary is at the end of each place because that's where it is on my plan. So what I did here is I went back through and I determined, where might the word vulnerable fit best within my actual analysis? Where might, Eugen go? Where might depiction live? So then you'll see here I placed vulnerable inside my analysis area, Eugen inside there. So that when I get to the end of that point, I've made my point, and now I'm just moving on to my transition and my next point. So you'll see again here, I've got my purple word fiend there. Genuine is here, depiction, connotation, I am going to use at the end of this because that's my concluding statement. And I've sort of moved them into the place in which they belong. Okay, so with that said, I think that could be helpful to make sure that you do actually say those words and they aren't just sort of hanging there at the end and they're forgotten about. So my next step is to read my plan as many times as I possibly can. I'm going to read the entire plan probably 5 times out loud. Then I'll start setting it down and trying to memorize and trying to get through pieces of it without looking. Eventually, I will move to just this document. And again, I will read it through from beginning to end multiple times. Then I will start to put it down and not look at it anymore and only reference it. Think of this as a song or a performance. You have to practice, you have to memorize, you have to make sure that you have those moments that you can trigger your brain to do exactly what it is you want to do in that moment. All right? So go back through your plan, finalize, polish, revise your bullet list, make sure it's set, ready to go, and practice, practice, practice every day until it is your turn. Good luck.